the reason why I would pick the Kansas City Chiefs to not just 3-peat, but 4-peat is this news about Tyreek Hill is news. And I told you 2 months ago, I had it on good authority, he was going to go back to the Kansas City Chiefs if he had the option. He wanted to go back to the Kansas City Chiefs, is the exact quote that we got from Josh Moser, if he had the opportunity to do so. So you get Tyreek Hill back. Travis Kelce retires at the end of the season. I think that's also safe to assume. You lose a valuable weapon. But we've already seen Noah Gray be used a lot in the tight end position. They have great weapons, or a lot of really good weapons is what Kansas City Chiefs, that's kind of been their MO over the past 2 years. Not necessarily superstar wide receivers, but guys who are good enough to get the job done. I'm not worried about the Kansas City Chiefs losing a valuable coordinator because at the end of the day, whether it's Matt Nagy or Eric Bieniemy, it really doesn't matter, and we've seen that. Andy Reid is the guy who runs that offense, who makes those schemes, who calls those plays on the offense, and that's why they're going to stay winning for a long time, beyond the fact that they have Patrick Mahomes under center. And then you look at the defensive coordinator and Steve Spagnuolo. Let's be honest, Spags, for whatever reason, because of his previous head coaching experience or his previous stop, people don't value him as a head coach. It doesn't seem like right now, even if they should. And I can't help but wonder, I don't think this is the reason, but I wonder if NFL owners think, you know what, maybe Spags starting off as a head coach at this age might be a little older than we would like for him to be starting at that position. I don't think it's an ageism thing, but I think age does play a factor, and he probably likes it in Kansas City, and people probably, they're okay with him staying there because it doesn't seem like he's gotten too much noise, in spite of the fact that, to me, he is one of, if not the best defensive coordinator in the NFL right now. So they're going to stick with their coordinators. They're going to stick with their head coach. They're going to stick with their guy under center. They're going to get their most valuable weapon from a couple years ago, and Tyreek Hill back in the building. What stops that Chiefs team from 3-peating and then 4-peating if Tyreek Hill comes back to the Kansas City Chiefs next season? Because you're not losing Spags. It doesn't matter who the offensive coordinator is. Matt Nagy, Eric Bieniemy, the Chiefs janitor. Andy Reid is the one scheming up plays and calling them on the offense. You've got Patrick Mahomes. You've got Chris Jones. You've got great guys on your defense. Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis, a great offensive line outside of Jawan Taylor. They just know how to win. They're the best situational team in the NFL. They have the best third down conversion rate. They are the best team in the last 2 minutes of the game. They are going to come up big with plays at the end of games on defense, on offense, and on special teams. They prove that. To me, it is inevitable. I predicted a Chiefs 3-peat of a year ago now. I'm going to predict a 4-peat now as well because Tyreek Hill's going back to the Kansas City Chiefs, and nobody is going to be able to stop that duo once they return. So now, let's move on here to the wild card weekend schedule. So on Saturday, we're starting off at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Chargers-Texans on CBS, 8 p.m. Eastern, Steelers-Ravens on Prime. Sunday, January 21st, and the next day, Broncos-Bills at 1, Packers-Eagles at 4:30, and in the primetime game on Sunday Night Football on NBC is going to be Commanders-Bucks. And then on Monday, we've got Vikings at Rams because the Vikings lost last night's game. Of course, I'm sure you watched it. Great game, especially down the stretch there. Lions really made their presence known in that one. In the Chargers-Texans game, I'm going to pick the Chargers to win that game. Steelers-Ravens on Prime at 8 p.m. on Saturday. I'm going to pick the Ravens to win that football game. Better quarterback. Don't want to say better coach because that would be an insult to Mike Tomlin, and I don't think that's true. I think Mike Tomlin is a top 5 head coach in the NFL, but we already know what Mike Tomlin is good for. Mike Tomlin is good for overachieving the regular season, but not having the right talent or the guys in the right spots to make any real noise in the postseason. For that reason, I'm going to pick the Ravens. Broncos-Bills to start off our Sunday slate. I'm going to pick the Bills. It feels like Josh Allen and an MVP or MVP runner-up season. He has that team rolling. This is the best that Buffalo Bills team has looked in years. They finally have a run game. Their defense is finally starting to fire on all cylinders at the right time to start the end of the season. For that reason, I'm going to pick the Bills. Eagles, Packers. I'm going to go with the Eagles. I love the Packers. To me, I said they were a top 5 team in the league all year long. Top 6 on their worst day, maybe. To me, the biggest issue with them was the turnovers, specifically by Jordan Love throwing interceptions, throwing into triple coverage. Sometimes the Brett Favre ghost over his right or left shoulder would pop up out of nowhere, and you felt that during games. But they know how to run the football, and they've got a great defense, and I do like Jordan Love a lot. But to me, the Eagles have the better quarterback. They've got the better run game. They have the better offensive line. They're better in the trenches. And the Eagles, in what was going to be a great running matchup, if nothing else, are going to squeak one out with Saquon Barkley. Commanders, Buccaneers. I'm going to pick the Commanders. I love the Buccaneers roster. They've won the division now 4 years in a row, twice with Brady, now 2 times with Baker Mayfield. He deserves a lot of respect. I love Mike Evans. I love that team in general. Like I said, a really underrated roster and definitely the best one in that division, which is not saying much, but it's saying something. But the Commanders, like I told you, Jaden Daniels in a 2-minute drill, outside of Patrick Mahomes, there is no one I trust more in the NFL in a 2-minute drill than Jaden Daniels. That counts for something. This is not going to be a blowout. It's going to be a close game. And in the last 2 minutes of the game, I have all the faith in the world in Jaden Daniels against Baker Mayfield. I think the Commanders win their first playoff game in a while. Finishing off our slate, Monday, January 13th, 2025, 8 p.m., Vikings at Rams. I'm going to take the Vikings. I don't think I'm just going with my heart here. I think I'm also going with my head. The Vikings, even though I've always questioned their run game this season, and to me that is obviously their biggest weakness, and it was the biggest disparity yesterday when you watch the Lions and the Vikings on primetime, and Jahmyr Gibbs and the Vikings run game in general. I mean, you've got Sam Darnold out there running for his life at certain times too. When that pass rush was able to pin their ears back and get after him, I would pick the Vikings in that game because they can run the ball better than the Rams. They run it more efficiently. They're also better on third down. I love Sean McVay, but I love Kevin O'Connell as a head coach as well. And I think Sam Darnold will be capable. And I think I see the Chiefs Week 18 the same way that I see the Vikings Week 18, where you get humiliated, you get stomped out, but you know what? I think it's for the better, and I think the coaches almost wanted that because it gives you an opportunity here to reset and figure out, okay, we couldn't do anything right last week. We've got to adjust. We've got to focus on the fundamentals. We've got to be on our P's and Q's, and I think the Vikings will emerge next week victorious, and they'll come out with a bang, and I think they'll be just fine. I will pick the Vikings in that game. Last thing here that I want to address. There's a report that Kirk Cousins could be headed to the Cleveland Browns. I think it makes a lot of sense. If the Cleveland Browns sign Kirk Cousins, I think you're going to see a repeat of what we saw in Atlanta this year, where Cleveland has the second overall pick. So even if they sign Kirk Cousins, there's nothing stopping them from doing what Atlanta did to Kirk this season, which he didn't love, and drafting a quarterback, whether it ends up being Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. They've got the second pick. They are not trading down. I see a world where Kirk Cousins ends up signing with Kevin Stefanski, and with the Browns, they have him there as the starter to start the year, and eventually they phase in that new rookie quarterback, whoever that may be. After a few weeks of sitting behind Kirk to learn from a pro and a veteran, we've already seen this play out in multiple different places over the years. That seems to be the recipe for success, and I think the Cleveland Browns are going to do that once more with whoever they feel their guy of the future is. But I think that the Deshaun Watson saga and experiment is over. I can definitely attest to that. Okay, so with that being said, that is all for this week's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We have an excellent NFL playoff week ahead of us. Like I said at the beginning of the show, to me, you can already fill 3 head coaching vacancies in the NFL. I know that for the Jets, it's going to be Rex Ryan filling in that head coaching vacancy. He went on ESPN radio in New York this morning, and he said, I feel confident I'm going to get that job. I believe him. I think he has a source that's telling him that. And Mike Tannenbaum's 33rd team is the one running the search. It just makes a lot of sense. It's almost like family at this point. Rex Ryan is going to get the Jets head coaching job. I think the Patriots end up going after Mike Vrabel. They saw that he interviewed with the Jets. They don't want that happening. More importantly, Robert Kraft does not want his former player playing or coaching in his own division for a different team than his own. I think Mike Vrabel ends up going to the Patriots, and I think Ben Johnson, if he does make a move, the Bears make the most sense. There was reporting over the weekend that I found interesting that Ben Johnson could go to the Jaguars, but the Jaguars did not fire their GM, and for that reason, it feels like, based on the reporting we've seen, Ben Johnson may or may not prefer his own guy at GM. So while it could still happen, I would lean more towards the Bears if he goes anywhere. Like I said, that is all for this week's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got a great playoff week ahead, and it is the most wonderful time of the year. I'll see you next week.